ETFs have enjoyed some very strong growth in the past 2 decades. And they are a very strong asset class and product of most shadow banks and most asset management companies. They're now an essential component of any portfolio, and they're still growing very fast. However, some say they may play a role in the next financial crisis. Fixed income ETFs in particular, and especially those targeting corporate bonds or emerging markets and these sort of riskier sectors, tend to be much more liquid than their underlying assets. I guess my question is, what happens when the actual assets freeze up and investors can't get out of their positions in ETFs, and how would this affect the larger market if a large freeze up were going to happen?
What ETFs illustrate is some general principles about financial engineering and financial regulation, which is that simplicity is good and complexity is bad. The basic concept of an ETF, which is that you are able to trade a particular index or combination of securities in a highly liquid and low-cost fashion. There is nothing wrong with that. And some ETFs are essentially a sort of modern form of unit trust, where there is a set of underlying securities pooled in that ETF and you trade them. The complexities and the problems become when you start creating what are called synthetic ETFs, where through a variety of derivatives and other mechanisms you have created something which will mimic the price behavior of the underlying, but where it is also has some synthetic engineering going on. And that engineering is often used, as you suggest, to provide an immediate liquidity in a pool of assets which is not there in the underlying pool of assets itself. And one of the most important things we have to worry about in the regulation of the financial system and shadow banking is the manufacture of synthetic liquidity. Out there in the real economy, there's a certain amount of risk and liquidity. And you can't walk away from that, because that's inherent with the operational cash flows, the risks, etc. The financial system at any time can enable people to trade things and sell and buy immediately claims on activities out there in the real economy which are long-term and illiquid. That liquidity manufacturing process, up to a point, has a social value, and beyond that point has no social value. There's no great benefit in people being able to trade at the nanosecond level rather than the 3-second level. But the engineering required to create hyper-liquidity creates complexity. So the crucial thing that regulators should always have an enormous bias towards is simple structures. They should hate complexity. They should hate things manufactured out of complex derivatives, and they should hate or be very suspicious of liquidity transformation, where end investors are offered a degree of liquidity which is not there in the inherent underlying positions. And that is what is worrying regulators across the world, and they're trying to get to grips with what they do about it.
Okay. Well, Lord Turner, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
If we wanted to know more about debt and the macroeconomic problems of today, should we look at?
You should indeed look at Between Debt and the Devil. It's in hardback at the moment. It's in Chinese, in Japanese, in Portuguese, coming out in French. But I also have the paperback version coming out in April with a new afterword, which I've written about what I call the failure elite of the elites and the reaction of populism. I do think that Trump's victory reflects a somewhat perverse response to the rise of inequality and the failure of the capitalist system, because it's a response which is going to make it worse, but which is a response which was completely predictable because of the failures of mainstream economic policy and mainstream economic theory.